understand? Like that kind of sense. And then from here, you're stepping over, you're maintaining this form, kind of sinking into this stance. Then from here, I want you to feel like your chest is open, hips are open. You're going to close everything at this point. And so as you do, we're in here, we're going to make big ashuke. And as we do, we're going to make my back foot's now pointing forward. And then I'm going to rotate, rotate, rotate. Then escape, control down, stepping forward. And then again, this squeezing in, squeeze, before escaping again. And then, before sinking into stance. Understand?
Yes.
Any questions?
Awesome, sir. We talked about before breaking the center line.
Yeah.
Nekashidashi is one of the positions that you break the center line a little bit, or?
Yeah, well, it's not one of the basic stances. So for sure, you're not over engaging your hips,
awesome.
right? I mean, nor would you want to break it, but you can afford to sit down in your stance, and this engagement that we have in our three basic stances, front, back, side stance, we don't necessarily have.
Awesome.
Like, we have this in Zenkusachi, Kokusachi, and Kiburachi. We have it mostly in Hangetsu. We have it completely in Furudachi. Nekowa, we have it kind of in Shizentai, like Shotokan, Jakachi, but not overly, of course. And in Nekowachi, we allow our center to come down to the point where your hips, your bum's out, but you're not releasing it so much. So don't break it, just allow it to be natural. This is really often called Shizentai, like a natural stance, rather than Tachikata, which is a formal stance. Anything else?
The last, your punch, the stance and where you're punching, because there's so many variations of where you're punching.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really a function of the equicenter, which I'm not a fan of anyway. So, for general kind of basic Shotokan, I would say you're straight on, you're kicking and you're stepping 45 degrees, trying to lower your stance. So you're punching to the same line that you just kicked at, albeit from a different angle. And then you're going to reset and come back to this straight line before, and then you're generally speaking back to the equicenter. But like on the stop, this is stupid. Anything else? No? Okay, so just watch my breath. Listen for my breath. Okay, so this. This kind of thing, yeah? Right, so one shake breath, okay? Right. All good? With your partners, try. Control your breath is kind of connected to the control of your abdomen, right? And controlling your abdomen is vital. And so Hangetsu often is considered a breathing kata. What I would say is that it's also a kind of absorption kata. Understanding how to absorb an attack, how to reflect an attack. So, like learning how to control your breath is the start of learning how to absorb a technique. So, I'll show you briefly, just to give Goodrick revenge. So, if Goodrick punches, punch. I can resist. Punch. Okay, I can resist. Then, if he punches, you have to be able to kind of sometimes absorb a punch. And so I can do that with my breath. So I'm going to breathe in, and then on the punch, I'm going to breathe out. So he's going to punch harder. He's going to punch harder. As hard as he can. Is that it? Don't be shy. This absorption, punch, or I'll punch you. this absorption is just me taking that energy, and that is closing my abdomen, which is making this impact hard. Just massage. Oh, nice massage. Then of course, I can transfer it. I can allow this energy, sorry. You understand? I'm taking his.
Once again, since I missed that one.
This finger. Do you understand? So this absorption. This absorption is about using that impact to create energy. A really good friend of mine, a guy called Michael Thompson, he was in 1988 to 1999 European Kyokushin champion. Like back in the day when Kyokushin was really, really tough and really big. He then went to Japan and he was one of the first fighters in K1, which was the forerunner of, K1 I think still exists, he was the forerunner of the UFC, a guy called Andy Hug, who was a Swiss guy, he was the crown champion, but Michael was Andy's training partner for many, many years. Michael, really, really tough guy. Well, he used to do this in, he used to tell me he used to do this in context, because I was talking to him about this, and he said, oh yeah, I did that. I was like, this is an old Okinawan. No, I just did that naturally. And so people can Kyokushin, they're not punching to the face, but they punch the body. And so every time someone punched the body, he would use that. He would pom pom feeling. And it just got natural. Every punch was delivered another punch, another punch, another punch. Until they got tired. Every time they punched him, they got hurt. This is natural absorption. You understand? Of course, the counter of this, of this absorption, no, be tense. No, be tense. Like, so if you're just tense, then you can counter this. So this inhibits. So every time we have this in kata, or this in kata, this is an anti-absorption. This is stopping people from absorbing. So like there's layer upon layer upon layer that we can discuss. But it starts with understanding your breath. Do you understand? Not just a superficial, making this shape. It starts with understanding your breath. And Hangetsu is a way to understand that, because there's variations and things you can play with, gives you different tools, which then allows you to kind of investigate things more fully. Any questions?
Does this also work on somebody the size of Björn's?
I mean, you can like this. It gets a little bit silly at times, but you can actually fight it. You can resist it. So you can. When I was in Japan on the instructor course, like sometimes you just have to stand there as target and like they just lay into your gakuzuki, and you fight it with this tension as well. And so it gets to a level where you're injured, but not as much as them type thing. Yeah, I'm not going to really talk about that much, because it's kind of a little bit silly at some point. But my point, what I'm trying to say is that controlling your breath, controlling your abdomen is fundamental, and everything comes from that point. So don't just think you're making shapes and breathing in, breathing out, kind of vacuously and without any meaning. It has really important meanings. To the point where people don't even know about it, like Michael Thompson, and just concludes that through natural trial and error. Never taught it, that's where he ended up. So it does have basis in good practical grasp. Okay? Okay, last time. Hangetsu. Next. Okay, oi. Okay, say Hangetsu. Yes. Okay, speed and power by count. San, shi, go, ro, shi, charge, kyo, jo, ich, san, shi, go, ro, chi, I come. 就 1、3、4、5、6、 great, well done. You tried valiantly. Okay, last chance then, guys. Any questions before we finish? All good? I won't make you do push-up. Yeah.
This remarks you made in the last, the first session.
Yeah.
We were moving up when you talk about friction training and friction, and
Yeah.
I didn't quite get the language.
Okay. So, like a useful fiction. Do you understand what a useful fiction?
Yeah.
Or axiomatic truth?
What's that friction?
Yeah. A useful fiction is or an axiomatic truth. Axioms are used in maths. Useful fiction is used in philosophy. So a useful fiction is something that we decide to imagine is true, even though we know it's not true, because we know by that using that fiction, playing by those rules, the outcome will be greater than if we don't. So, for example, like if you have a handgun, if you have a gun, let's say you have a handgun. Like if you, like, I'm from the UK, Ireland, we don't have guns, but you know, I know, I've been to America enough to know that if you have a gun and you hand it to someone, you check that it's empty and you hand it to them. And then they check that it's empty and then they look at the gun. And they go, oh yeah, that's a really nice gun. And then when they give it back, they check that it's empty and then they give it back and the person checks that it's empty and goes, oh, thanks very much, and put it away. Now, this is a useful fiction because they know it's empty. But every time they go through that procedure of checking it's empty, even though they know it's empty, it's a useful fiction because they know by doing that, the outcome will always be safe. Because there's that one time you go, oh yeah, that's like, oof, you know, like there's that one time when you just don't know and it's loaded and something bad happens. So karate is that kind of useful fiction in the sense that we know that this technique doesn't work. If we wanted to punch someone, there's no way we would start in this position and make a full stance and step forward. We know that. But by imagining it works and creating scenarios where it works, a number of things happen. First of all, we have strengthened legs. We have more explosive legs, because to move in this distance takes strength and twitch muscles and coordination. We have a stronger core. We have a greater coordination between the drive of our back leg and the extension of our hand, because we're doing it in this extreme way. And so by practicing this useful fiction, when we actually go to hit someone, we hit them with a greater physical ability than just hitting them. And so that's what I mean by kihon, especially for most sets of kumite. It's not really realistic. And even kata, you know, even the application of kata, it's quite orchestrated, but it is a useful fiction that we buy into, because then when we step out, then we have a greater ability to deal with reality. Problem is, people get locked into that fiction. And they go, oh no, this is reality. It's not reality. It's just an axiomatic truth that we decide is real for the time being here. And as soon as we step out, then we're just us. You know? Okay. Back to straight lines.